Going live. Cool. And I'm going to share my screen. Cool. Music licensing made easy. Yeah. So real quick, again, doing the obligatory, like I'm not a music lawyer. So when in doubt, consult an attorney. So now that that's out of the way, and the thing I have to say that everybody says for these things, my objective with this is like, so recently I wrote a song for a contest that I had to use a lot of samples for because like 90s big beat, like Fatboy Slim, stuff like that. And that particular genre of music uses, back in the 90s, they would use like records from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s and sample them. But licensing back then wasn't nearly as strict as it is now. And so like I wanted to do my due diligence, but a big part of that is, well, how do I do that? And so I went through the process of, making sure everybody got the royalty splits and all that stuff. But there's a lot of terms and a lot that I had to learn to navigate that, while admittedly I'm probably not as good as a music lawyer in this field, I think I got a good enough grasp on it to at least give the baseline to when people throw out terms like PROs or different music rights, or like for instance, we'll learn some things about CC, Creative Commons, later on. That was really eye opening. That got me to the next level to where I'm safer than most, and I can at least have an informed discussion with a music lawyer at this point. So that's kind of what I want to share with you all. It's just like, hey, here's what I learned, and hopefully this will help too. So my goal with this is we'll go through and learn some music right things, and then I actually made and pulled one of my contracts I got through this service I use called TrackLib for sample licensing. So we'll get into like some different licenses that there are real quick, and then from there, I'll go through that contract. I think I redacted like all the personal information, but we'll go through and like kind of highlight, hey, here's in this contract where it's stating some of these terms that we learned earlier on. So with that, we'll go through and get into some terms to know here. What did I just do? All right. So terms to know. Music rights. And by the end, if we have time for questions at the end, I'll answer questions to the best of my ability. So music rights. So what are rights? Well, this is how the music can be used, right? And generally there's two camps rights fall under. You have composition rights. So this is the music and lyrics, or things like the things that come from the artist's mind. And then there's the recording rights, which is the physical medium that the music is played through. So, and we'll see how these get split up. But if I'm a singer and I come up with this melody, do, 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 well, that's mine. Like that's the thing that I came up with. And if somebody else uses that do, 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 well, they have to come to me for the composition rights. Now, let's say I go into a studio and they record me singing that and they create a master. We'll get into what a master is soon. But it's pretty much like, think of it as like the stencil that all other CDs and streams like get traced from to be distributed to the public. So now you have like all these mediums that do is on: CD, Spotify, YouTube Music, cassette tapes. Those are now the recording rights. So now that we know the two different types of rights, let's get into who are the people that get paid. Well, when you have the artist, I should make this people ideally getting paid. So you have the artist, right? The person who came up with the music. And they get paid through composition rights. So artists, composition rights. You then have the publisher. So the publisher manages the protection and registration of the artist's rights, and they pitch that music for like records and licensing and sync deals and like all the different ways it can be monetized. So if you think like, if I make a piece of music, well, nobody may ever hear of it because like I just made it in my room. But I may poke somebody, a publisher, and say, hey, here's this thing that I made. And they may be like, ooh, that's really cool. Let me get this to a radio station, or let me try to get this on TV. They're like, they're like my advocate in that way. And so often, a lot of artists may also register as their own publisher within their PRO, which is a performance rights organization. We'll get to that in a second, but you can be your own publisher. Now, publishers also get paid through composition rights. So let's say in that melody, and I feel like I'm going to be singing this a lot, in that do, 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 and that sells. Me as the artist and me as a and my publisher, we may agree that like, hey, I'm going to get, I don't know, 50% of the composition rights, and you get 50% of the composition rights. So if I make $1 off of that song, now I get 50 cents and they get 50 cents. However, if I was just trying to do it myself and didn't have a publisher, then maybe it would only make 10 cents, right? So like publishers are really multiplying the effectiveness and the reach of your song. And again, you can register as your own publisher. All right. So now a record label, right? We've all heard of record labels. These are the folks that are actually recording and producing the music on, keyword on, the physical mediums that others can listen to. So they are the ones, when you go into a recording studio, like they're either the ones that are actually recording you, or they may be paying for you to go record. But they own the finished master, right? So when you sing and you make your song and then that gets recorded, and then you have mixing engineers like putting it up, and mastering engineers to get into that final piece of music, that original recording, that's called a master. Okay. So the master, again, is like that stencil from which everything else gets pulled from. So from that master, you're creating CDs. From that master, you're creating streams. From that, like all that stuff comes from that original file. And so they get paid the recording rights. These are also often referred to as master rights, right? So same thing up here, recording rights, aka master rights, they're used interchangeably. All right. So next, PROs, performance rights organizations. If you're like me and you've heard people say like, hey, you need to register for a PRO, that probably sounds like really intimidating and weird and crazy. And maybe if we have enough time, I have a song that I have not registered to a PRO yet, and maybe I can do that. Maybe I can do it at the end if we have time to kind of show you that. But performance right organizations, the most popular in the United States is ASCAP and BMI. They're not different from each other. You could theoretically register for both and maybe get a little bit more payment because they cover like slightly different areas, but they overlap 99%. And so what these PROs do is they register songs so that the artist can collect as much payment as possible from avenues they may not be aware of. So like if you've ever listened to a song on the radio, or you've listened to a song on YouTube, or you're out at a bar and the DJ has that like a massive book of karaoke songs that are clearly copies of originals. And you're wondering like, how the hell do they not get sued for this? Or like, how are they paying for this? Well, that's done through a PRO, right? These people buy licenses or they pay for certain amounts of streams to the PRO, who then distributes that to, guess what? Your artist and your publisher, right? So artist, publisher, registers. Why am I grabbing this thing? Register within the PRO, and the PRO says, hey, you've registered this song. Radio stations and YouTube, like all these places are paying us to play it. So now we have that payment. We're going to give you the payment that you deserve because we've collected it from all these other areas, right? If you have not registered your pieces of music on a PRO and it's just up on YouTube, well, now people are just playing it on YouTube, and you might get paid for whatever streams you get paid from YouTube, but you're not getting paid for the song. If somebody rips it and uses it on their TikTok or whatever that is, like you're not getting paid for that. So you have to register it on a performance rights organization for those nuanced channels to properly pay you. So you may be asking, well, how much does a PRO cost? Really not that much, if anything. Like I forget how much I paid to join ASCAP, and I registered as both as a songwriter and a publisher. It might have been free because I registered for both, but even still, it's like, I don't know, maybe 50 bucks one time. I'm not sure if it's a yearly renewal. Like, it's not a lot. So definitely worth the investment. All right. And then distributors. So distributors distribute your music. So these are services like DiscoKid, Lander. There's a whole bunch of them. And so where your PRO is like tracking to see who's using your song, you may be wondering, well, how does that music actually get on Spotify? How does it actually like get on YouTube and TikTok and these like streaming platforms? A distributor does that. So when I registered a song on my PRO, I also registered it on DistroKid, and DistroKid gave me like a number that says, "Hey, your song ID is this number. So plug that in into your PRO, plug that into your sample license agreement, and then we can tell you like, hey, this song played 100 times, you made this much, and now you can divvy it up that way." So yeah, if you want your music to be spread on a bunch of platforms, like you can go online and you can find my music on TikTok now because it's been registered with a distributor. So there's other players, right? You can get more nuance, but generally, if you remember these five, you, the artist, your publisher, who can also be you, who's helping amplify, the record label, who's recording, mixing, mastering, all this stuff. Again, you can do this yourself if you want, and then you own the master rights, right? So theoretically, if you perform all these three duties, you own 100% of both your composition and your master rights. Now, it may be tricky because you don't have as much reach as all these things together, but you also have more ownership. So, that's the trade-off. So artist, publisher, record label, performance rights organization, these are tracking, who should be paying you. And then the distributor is actually like who's putting your music out on the market. Cool. So now we have that. Let's talk about different types of licenses. Now, I made this for somebody else, so I'm only going to give two, but there's a bunch of them. So these two, like there's so many of them. And honestly, if you Google like what kind of license do I need to do X, Y, and Z, then it'll find it. We're going to go through a sample license, which isn't on here, but by the end, you'll know what that is. So you have a sync license. Sync licenses allow the right to pair visual media with a piece of music. So if a director says, I want a piece of music on my film, or I want a piece of music on like my TV show, that's a piece of visual media. And so they're going to be looking for a sync license in order to use your music to be paired with that medium. That's all a sync license is. A master use license gives permission to use a pre-recorded track, i.e. the master, in a project. So this can coexist with the sync license. Or so like if you want to use like a song that you didn't make, you'll probably need the master use and the sync license. So like, let's say you're a film maker, you're not the musician in this scenario, you're the filmmaker, and you want to use, I don't know, something from the Beatles. Everybody knows the Beatles. You need a master use license and a sync license to use a Beatles song in your film. Okay. If, however, you're just hiring like a composer, like, hey, can you just like sing the song or whatever, and like we're just going to use it for this film, you probably just need a sync license. Cool. So now let's get into some common license terms. When you actually make a license, there's a bunch of different ways that this contract, when you make a contract, there's a couple ways that this contract can be structured. The first is exclusivity. Basically, you're asking, or you're offering as a musician, am I willing to make it to where when I allow you to use my music, I can no longer use it anywhere else? Or I'm going to let you use my music, but I also get to use it in other places. If you're offering a studio a filmmaker, a video game developer, to have that they get the sole access to your song, you now have an exclusive agreement. Now, as you can guess, an exclusive agreement is more expensive than a non-exclusive agreement, generally speaking. And so one of the things I want you all to think about as we go through all these is, a lot of indie studios, they look at, creating or hiring music to create their game, and they think it's like, oh, it's so far out of the realm of my ability to afford it that there's no way that I could possibly afford a musician. And likewise, as a musician, you may be like, well, I don't want to undersell myself. Well, what if you offer like, hey, game studio, I will give you a non-exclusive agreement to use this game for like way, way less, because then you can potentially use that music in other places, right? So this is how I want you to think about it. Like each one of these, there's trade-offs. So next, let's go into buyouts. Buyouts, I think of like pay now. So buyouts and royalties, we'll actually pair these. Buyouts, I think of as pay now, royalties is pay later, right? So if you let somebody buy out your music, you're just saying, hey, give me X amount of money. We'll say $500 for this 1 minute piece of music. And they don't have to worry about paying you, after the fact. Royalties, you've heard of this, is like pay later. So on the other side, you may say, hey, for every game that you sell or every time this movie gets streamed, I want X% of whatever the revenue makes, right? This is a royalty. Now, again, think about this. A lot of times, and I work in the game space, and indie game developers like, I don't have $500 to pay you for 1 minute of music. Okay, well, how about this? I, as a musician, think your game is really cool. I also think it has the potential to be very successful. So what if instead, you pay me, X% royalties once you make profit on your game. So if it costs you $10,000 to make your game, once you make $10,000 in sales, I want, 10% of your sales thereafter. Things like that, right? You don't have to pay me anything up front. So again, you can balance this out. So, and yes, you can blend these two, right? So maybe somebody's like, well, hey, I don't want to give you that much in royalties. I can also say, well, how about you give me, $200 per minute of music right now, and we'll lower it to 5% royalties, right? So again, you can expand your working knowledge at the negotiating table by offering these different checks and balances. All right. The last one I want to touch on, there's plenty more, is time. And so I think of this as rent or own. So you can say, hey, I want to give you, or I'm willing to let you buy my music for a 3-month period, totally exclusive, right? Or indefinitely. So yeah, you can set time limits on this, but again, think of it like let's say there's an indie studio and they come to me and they say, hey, I want you to write this piece of music, but I can't really pay for it. Okay, well, that's kind of a bummer, right? But I want to get my name out there. I want to add some projects. I don't want to stiff an indie developer. And, there could be potential. Like if the game takes off, cool, I should deserve to get paid for it, but I know it's a risk. And if it doesn't, well, I still want to be able to use this maybe for another project, another pitch, whatever that is. So maybe what I can say is, all right, how about this? I will give you exclusive rights to this music for 6 months. You get exclusive rights to this music for 6 months. And if your game takes off by then, I want, we'll say $500 for every minute of music if you pull profitable. If it doesn't, you can still use my music, but I want to change the contract then to non-exclusive rights after 6 months. So now what I'm offering is use this, launch as if it was a full-blown thing and give you a real chance to succeed with the audio. But if it flops, you can still use this audio, it's fine. But I also get to use it in other areas too. Now, the thing that you have to keep in mind with a composer, right, is if you try to use that audio in another game and they're like, well, we want exclusive rights to it, you can't do that anymore because the previous composer or the previous studio like already has the audio in the game. So again, there's just some things to keep in mind. But all it's to say is there's multiple ways that you can structure and negotiate a contract to where you as a composer, you as a musician, can still get paid for the work that you do, but also be accessible to maybe some smaller studios that may not have Hollywood budgets. Cool. So next, I'm going to pull a sample license for this little soundtrack that I made and just go through some like, I don't know, high level things that's written in this to look out for and maybe pick this apart. So let's go into boom. Right out of the gate, under certain subscription plans, pay the license fee. Again, we know what a license fee is, right? A license fee is essentially a sync fee. They're saying, hey, pay us X amount of money in order to use this song. So that's it. I paid an upfront fee in order to get this service that then paid my license fee. All right, now what about sample details? I use a song called I Need a Love Like Yours by Deion Jackson, among many other people. And you can see, right? I have the artist, I have the record label, I have the publishers, I have the writers, which are also composers. So you can see these guys up here are all people getting paid within this contract. Here we go. We see where my distributor is and how much I'm paying to the service TrackLib. I'm 10% of whatever I get from my distributor plus my license fee, which ended up being $0. And then that goes to each of these people. All right. What else we got? And this like just splits it up. So like you also have your writers, 5%, your publishers, 5%. That makes up the 10%. And then, these are like the writers and publishers' names up here. Cool. Here, if you notice, Dogbeard says that's me. I registered that as my publishing company. So I'm my own publisher. And then Alexander Lefero Dietrich, that is me. I am the artist. So when it comes to composition shares for me, or shares for me in general, right? 10%, right? 2.5 for their publisher, 2.5 for their other publisher, 5% for the writers, that's 10%. And then 90% for me for my song. All right. Here we go. Rights and restrictions. So when I use this track, this sample, I got non-exclusive right, meaning other people can use the same song that I did in order for their samples. So boom, right there. Derivative songs, when it comes to sampling, these are just songs that were made off of the sample. So like the song that I was sampling is usually called the original. My song is now the derivative. Anything else in here? Okay, here's a really good one. So as we went through earlier, right, we know there's sync licensing, master licenses. We're now going through a sample license. And a lot of times people are like, well, hey, what if I just like paid for a sample, which in many cases is cheaper than a sync license, and then just use that in my music? Here in sample license, you generally will have some sort of clause that says you can't use a sample alone. You can't make money off of just a sample alone or incorporate it into a pack that's not yours. Like you have to make something off of the sample. And so this is pretty unique to a sample license, right? So within these contracts, they're probably going to cover like, hey, if you're using this as a sync, you're using it as a sync. If you're using it as a master, you're using it as a master or master usage. If you're using it as a sample, you have to use it as a sample. You can't like crisscross too much. Anything else? Yeah, so that's pretty much just like crazy mumbo jumbo stuff. But yeah, so that's some like high level stuff, a little peek into a contract. So now I'll pause. I'll answer questions if anybody has them. And Yeah. Anybody have any questions? Otherwise, maybe I can go into like the back end of a PRO.
I have a quick question, like housekeeping question.
Yeah.
Can you make this document available so that we can look at it later?
Yeah. Yeah. All the music ID numbers are redacted. So I'll post that on our channel. Cool.
I guess what's in like I've also got a quick question. I saw it's you already mentioned it, what's in, but like I saw in the contract specifically that that there was a specific line that specified like how much of the song you could use. I believe on the contract itself it said like no more than 15 seconds.
Yep.
Is that like a usual thing you'll see in like a sample contract? Or?
Yeah, so I don't know if it's that way across like other sample libraries or anything, but how this particular so Tracklib is a service I use and it's online. It's pretty affordable. What they do is they structure their payment so you have A tier songs, B tier songs, and C tier songs. A tier songs tend to cost more, B in the middle, C is cheaper. And then how they structure them is no more than 2 seconds, up to 15 seconds, and then like I think up to a minute. Um, and then so for like a C tier song, if I'm using less than 2 seconds C tier, it's like pay them 2%. If it's up to 15 seconds, pay them 5%. If it's up to 60 seconds, 20%. I forget the exact numbers, right? But if I go to B tier, it's like 5 for 2 seconds, 15 for 15 seconds, 30 for a minute, right? So basically, what I did with this one is after I sampled everything, I looked at the original BPM, right? Because I could kind of track the time. And I looked at the measures that I used and said, okay, like the original, I took two measures of the song. The beats per minute is, I'm going to make the math easy on myself, is 120 beats per minute or 60 beats per minute. There you go. And so therefore, I used 8 seconds of this song. So it's more than two, less than 15. It's a C tier song. Therefore, I owe 10%, whatever that number was. And so, yeah, that's how they structure it. I'm not sure if that's that way with other libraries, how they do that. I don't know. But yeah, for Tracklib, that's how that's structured.
I actually just had another question.
Mhm.
You did mention earlier about Creative Commons licenses. I
Oh,
was
yeah.
wondering if you wanted to go over that a little bit.
Yeah. So the main thing I want to share with Creative Commons is there's actually different types of Creative Commons licenses. Okay. So a lot of times when people hear CC, Creative Commons, they think they can just use a piece of music or art commercially and not have to worry about anything. That's not always the case. Um, there's one type of Creative Commons license that you can do that with. That's called CC0, Creative Commons Zero. Creative Commons Zero is you do not have to attribute, meaning you don't have to give credit. You can use it commercially. You can do whatever you want with it, but it has to be CC0 specifically. Now, there may be other, I don't know all the Creative Commons, but it's not, when I looked into it, it wasn't too hard to piece apart. But basically, there will be like Creative Commons with attribution. So CC, I think it's AT or something. There's like a little uh, acronym at the end. Means, hey, like, I think this is CCAT. So don't take my word on this one specifically, but it's like, yeah, you can use this commercially as long as you credit the original uh, creator of whatever it is that you're using. Um, there may be like, I'm not sure there's like a CC non or derivative or non-derivative, something like that, where it's just like, hey, you can use this, but it has to be like totally changed from the original. Like there's things like that in CC, but all it's to say, like the one that I know for sure is if you want to use a sample or another person's artwork without having to worry about payments, royalties, giving credit, like any of that stuff, it has to be specifically Creative Commons Zero, CC Zero. Good questions. All right. I'm going to I'm going to see if I can get us through, like show you guys the back end of the PRO. So let me spin up ASCAP real quick and log in so you guys don't see my my password before I do any of this. Log in and get my sending me texts to multi-factor authenticate. All right. Remember this device. All right. So, let me now stream on YouTube.
I think we might have lost your audio here.
Oh, no.
I can't hear you.
Really? Damn. All right, hold on, stand by. All right, there's that. Oh, you know what it is? Hold up. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
I know it's picking up from my phone. So when I switched over, that's what's going on. Anyway, all right. Well, now you guys can hear me. I know what's going on. Okay. So now that that's all fixed up, this is ASCAP. Hooray. So let's register a work. I guess all my numbers and stuff are here, so I may want to clip that. Don't look at that. So,
Look at what?
there we go. Very nice. So I'm going to pull up. Oh man, Reaper. Where did I put this thing? Collabs. Oh man, pardon me as I find pitches. Red Bull. Okay. All right, I made this song for to try to pitch for Red Bull commercial. So but I didn't upload it yet. So I'm gonna name this. It's kind of like a high octane F1. So I don't know. What's like a cool high octane F1 song? Throw out names. I literally, because I'm not gonna name this song Red Bull pitch. Something fast and speedy and cool and I don't know.
I go fast.
I gotta go fast. I don't know. We'll call it G. Is there a dash in G Force? I don't know. There is a dash in G Force. G Force. I don't know, man. Not just G Force. There's got to be something that comes after it. I need your help, guys. I need your help. Something around my room. Oh, here we go. Here's something. I don't know, Sweat and Fire. I don't know. We'll take that. Yeah, Sweat and Fire. You're a racer, sputtering speed, whatever. Or Speed and Fire. Speed and Fire. That's cool. We'll do Speed and Fire. Okay.
My question right now is, I guess when you register a title, you can't change it afterwards?
I don't know. We might find that out because I haven't had to do that yet. Yeah,
I
don't know.
don't know if that'd be legal. So like,
Yeah, I have no idea. So now here's a song that I made that's got like the friggin' worst name in the world, but we're gonna register it anyway. Okay. Well, all right. So I guess all my numbers are here anyway. So all right. So search by writer or name. So check this out. If I don't know, is Paul McCartney? Yeah, look, I'm not sure which Paul McCartney it is. But Paul McCartney of the Beatles, right? Like, if he was the writer for this song, I would put him in for that, right? Look, Paul McCartney wrote this song. He did not. I wrote this song. Uh-oh. Hold on. No. Erase. We were just kidding. No, but I wrote this song. So, like, you can see, here's my name. Here's my ASCAP. Here's, like, my ASCAP number. Roll. Well, there's no lyrics in this, but I'm the composer, right? Or you could be the author, arranger, or whatever. There's a whole bunch of these, but I'm the composer. And remember, writers and publishers. In this, I'm going to register as my own publisher. I already did that. I'll show you that in a bit. But it must be 50%. So since I'm the sole writer, I'm going to put 50%. If, let's say, someone on this call also wrote, I would add another writer. Boom, add writer. Give them whatever we decide our splits would be. But that's that. All right, publisher. Here I am, Dogbeard Studios. There's TrackLib, like the place that I use to register the samples. That's all there. But I'm Dogbeard Studios. This is for the entire world, right? And I'm going to give Dogbeard Studios 50%. Ta-da! If there's more than one, I can add them here. Okay. So now we move down. How does this work?
And then, sorry, just a quick question. So when it comes to, like, say, writers and such, let's say, so what happens if, say, like, the person isn't, like, say, registered like ASCAP, for example, like, say, maybe they stay in a different country, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this will show folks from ASCAP, BMI, a whole bunch of other ones. So it's not just ASCAP that's on here. Let me try something real quick because it's a good, like, what if they're not registered at all? Let's see if that is, this writer has no publisher on, that might be it there. Publisher on no character. So I'm just going to throw this out because I haven't run into that particular problem yet, but it does look like there's like some sort of miscellaneous things on here that you could probably utilize. But again, if you think about it, like, what's the role of the publisher? The publisher's role is to be like, hey, we have numbers that trace you to this music so that way we can protect you. So if that person is not a publisher, they are essentially kind of leaving it up to the goodwill of whoever has registered the song to pay them. Which, let's say I did 25% and there's like another writer who hasn't been registered, but we'll say this writer's name is Bob, and they also composed it and they're owed 25%. Well, like, BMI can't track them. So, like, hopefully they can claim that 25%. I don't know how they do through this. Maybe it gets paid to me and I divvy it up. That I don't know. But basically, like if you want to get paid by a PRO, you need to register with either ASCAP, BMI, one of those. And then from here, there should be, like, who's a BMI? Hold on, I have an idea. There is, I know so basically, like, if you type in this IPI number, because I have pulled BMI up before for the sample, like the contract that I showed, there are people in there. TrackLib, the service, gave me their IPI or their IPI numbers, which is just like 130405. Like, that's my IPI number. And when I typed that in, it said, like, oh, they're BMI. So here you go. So they will provide Like ASCAP will provide like, oh, we can look up a BMI number as well. Does that answer your question?
Partially, but yeah, since I think for the most part, like it's just like very niche. Like I said, since so I stay in South Africa, right? So
Mhm.
so I was mainly asking like how that work out to say like I was a writer and like and like the other writer is American, right? So
Gotcha.
that's all I was saying. Like, yeah.
Well, let's look it up. It might be relatively. So you say you're South Africa?
Yeah.
All right, South Africa performance rights org, BMI, things like that. All right, let's take a look with BMI. With sister societies around, we're covering almost 200 countries, which is established reciprocal and unilateral representation. So let's see what South Africa has. South African Music Rights Organization Limited. So my guess is SAMRO, which would be like your version of BMI or ASCAP agreements. That number I should be able to type in here, and you should be able to type in yours, and then we would be co-registered together. That's my guess, just based off what I know for how these work. But it does look like there's some like unilateral agreements between the different different national performance rights organization to create like national webs.
All right. Yeah. No. Yeah. So you fully answered my question now. Thanks.
Cool. You bet. Yep. Good question. And that's like a lot of this too is like, yeah, like some of these questions, like I wouldn't have known that because I've never, collaborated with somebody like that. But now that we kind of know, like, oh, this is a PRO, and I know that, oh, we had these numbers, which I know track our music. Let me see if these other things have that. Like by having this baseline knowledge, you know, now you can start answering that stuff on Google and stuff like that. So but these are great questions. So anyway, so we have our writers publishers. So now I hit apply. Okay. Has this work been recorded? It hasn't. Like I made it in my bedroom. There is no recording master person like that. If I went to a studio, you know, they may give me a special number for this. I don't have it, so don't need it. This has not been performed. Is this work intended for a commercial? I haven't done this before, but yeah, this work is actually intended to be in a commercial. So let's see what this is. All right. This wasn't actually sold in a commercial, so I assume the commercial company would have like, so like around where I live, we have this place called the Martin Agency. I'm sure they kind of have an idea with this. So since it wasn't actually picked up, I guess it's a little too early to be doing that. But basically like all these things, like your film studios, your commercial agencies, like you as an artist and you as a publisher, like when you register with whomever your organization is, there are numbers that get all plugged in here is basically what I'm trying to include here. So when I did the sample, this work doesn't have a sample, but when I did the sample, and I will actually pull that contract up again, if you remember, I'm not going to switch screens just because it's going to be like a major pain in the butt. But if you remember, there was that point where I was like, hey, in the sample details, like here you can see the original song owners and the writers and these people and that people. And it was, you know, this song is I Need a Love Like Yours by Deion Jackson. It also had like that little IRSC number underneath it. Well, and you know, the artist also had their IPI numbers next to their name. Well, cool. I could plug that in there. Look, there's like a number because I already typed that in there. That would go in. Boom, you're done. You plug that in there. Now that person's getting their props. Doesn't use public domain, timeline of this work. Nah, doesn't really have any of that. But in short, all you need to know with this piece is you give it a title, you divvy out your splits between your artist and your publisher, and then pretty much like if there's a sample or a firm or whatever that has some sort of an identification that is assigned to it, you pretty much just plug those identification numbers in the following fields, and then you click submit. And then, oh, look, here it is. I have an ID for this track. super cool. And that's really all there is to it on this end. Now, let's go a step further and we'll go into DistroKid. We'll go to a distributor. So we've already covered me as an artist and me as a publisher, right? Alexander Lefero Dietrich, the artist, Dog Beer Studios, the publisher. We went through my PRO, which was ASCAP. I don't have a record label, but because I make all my stuff myself, but like we know what record labels is, like a studio, they're paying for your studio fees. Now let's go into this last bit that we've talked about, which is the distributor. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload music. I'm logged in. I want it across all these things. Oh yeah, let's put in Roblox. Juan. I own all publishing rights to this music. Yes, I do. I didn't use any samples. I'm not registered. Oh, wait, I am registered with the performing work. Okay. Well, all right. I guess since I'm doing this proper, Roblox is saying go F myself. So whatever. Yes, I do own 100% for Snapchat. Okay. DistroKid is going to try to upcharge me for friggin' everything. So I'm going to say no. Go to hell. And I speak English. I speak good English. This is kind of like an electronic thing. Dubstep, electro house. Yeah, we'll go with that. Sure. Album cover. I don't have a cover, but I have to have a cover. So I'm going to use my other cover, which is not good practice. Where did I put this? This was 2025 music. I did this. Pitches, indie game music. This might be it. Race Jam. I'm just going to use this thing again. Why not? You need it. This isn't a game, but whatever. Song title. Okay, so I called this. Gosh, guys, I'm just going to let you know, I really hope I can change this name because I freaking hate it. I hate it so much. But I call it like Speed and Fire. So cool. The coolest freaking song ever. Speed and Fire. Add featured artist. There's no featured artist. This is no version. This is just what it is. All right, my audio file. So, pitches, Red Bull pitch. And yeah, version 2, finished 4, finished 3, 5. Okay, finished. This is the most recent finished WAV file. So finished 7, because we know how that works, right? You're like, oh, this is the final, but the final. All right, so ISRC, this is the distribution code. If you remember earlier, like when we went through some of the ASCAP things, like I think there's a point where I could put ISRC. This is where when I upload this, it will give me the ISRC code. This isn't mixed for Dolby. This isn't a cover song. This is my real name. There's no lyrics, no radio. This is an instrumental. I'll let these services define like the clip. So if you go on TikTok, right, and you choose a song, it'll just kind of give you a 1-minute clip somewhere. Like I can decide when that is, but I'm going to say, no, I don't really care that much. All right. So if I want this on Apple Music, I have to give this credits. So I'm going to, there's, holy freaking cannoli. Is there like a synth on here? Synthesizer, me. That's me. Producer. I did everything. Beatmaker, code. Executive producer, that sounds cool. But I'm a humble man. I'll just be a producer. I apologize that you guys got to deal with me laughing at my own jokes, but this is how I do. I don't care. Okay. So one thing with DistroKid that I really want to point out, which by the way, I plan on moving from DistroKid, not just because they like take people's music for AI. I needed something because this one of my songs is on a deadline, but I digress. They do this thing where if you decide to get off of DistroKid, they will rip all of your songs down and say, screw you, unless you pay $29 per song to do that. Screw that. DistroKid was okay in a pinch, but so anyway, I'm letting you upload to YouTube. I'm okay with Apple Music changing like my capitalization to make it easier to read. Promo sources, Snapchat, all this stuff. Like I record, I own the rights, I do all this stuff, whatever. And it looks super duper good. And just like that, my friends, DistroKid is going to try to upsell me with some other shit. And I'm going to say, no, please fucking leave me alone. Pardon my French. Anyway. So this is now in the works and it takes a little bit for it to be fully uploaded. But when it is, you'll see it's going to be hit all these. So like my songs, Hedgehog Hills, New York Highway, Race Jam, Menu Theme, they're now on all these platforms. Like you can look it up and I'll actually show you guys my phone. Well, no, I won't because then you won't be able to hear me. But if you go on Snapchat or TikTok or whatever these is, and you look up New York Highway, Alexander LaFaro Dietrich, you can use that in your TikTok reel. You can listen to this on Spotify. You can do all this stuff now. That's how it got up there. So, and now if I go in here, you'll actually see, here's the IRSC number of Hedgehog Hills, right? It's there. So that is now how you get it distributed. So we now have it to where all my songs have an ID, are distributed, are registered with the PRO that's tracking where it's been distributed, all these things. I'm going to see if I can hold up. You can indeed edit your title. Woo! Wait, I think. Yes, you can edit your title. We good, folks. But yeah, so artists, publishers, record labels, PROs, distros, you've now been exposed to all of them. And that, my friends, is all that I have for you today. Oh, sweet. I didn't stream that on YouTube, so that's good. All the sensitive information is not being shared. That worked out good. So sorry, YouTube. Hopefully that everything I said made sense. But yeah, so with that, any questions? Feeling good? Feeling like a pro? Did this help?
Yeah, I think I'm more educated than I was 55 minutes ago. So
Cool.
There's that.
Awesome. That's the goal.
It was definitely useful to see it actually, like, you know, as someone actually going through the process of typing all the info out on like the ASCAP and whatnot. That definitely helped.
Good. I'm glad. Yeah. And yeah, like I said, all that stuff like DistroKid distributors you're gonna have to pay a little bit more for, but like ASCAP is, I think it's free to join, if not dirt cheap. And even the distributors are like, look into how they structure it, but it's affordable for all. Some are going to have like a higher entrance fee. Some are going to want to take more royalties, but we explained how that works, right? So you kind of know what's going on behind the scenes there. But all of it's simple. Like everybody's got a code and you see how you get those codes and, you know, they just get plugged into each other and that's that. So glad that helped.
Oh, I just remembered you talked about your dissatisfaction with DistroKid. Another one you had listed was Lander.
Yeah.
Is that any better or was that just something you just found?
There's a reason why I use DistroKid. So I don't know much about Lander. The reason I use DistroKid is pricing 20 distribution plus. I think the reason why I chose DistroKid originally is so, like, to give you some context, that game that I made for that game competition, there was like 5 days left to submit it. I've never done any of this before. And so because it was so sample heavy, I didn't want them coming back and saying like, well, screw you because like you ripped other people's music, which again, Big Beat is like, that's kind of the thing, but I wanted to do it legit. So I was like, all right, if I'm going to do this legit, well, I need to like pay them sampling. Well, when I got all my samples together and I went to TrackLab to like register my samples, they're like, hey, you need to get these numbers from this place. So I went to the PRO and started a PRO. It's just like, hey, but you need to get this from this place to plug into that place. Anyway, all these things that I showed you, I had zero clue. Like I had to learn this like that. And so long story short, I couldn't get that IRSC number to put into the sample license unless it got pushed live via a distributor. But it was only 5 days left. So like if I didn't get that number within 5 days and upload it into like my submission package, I wouldn't have been able to do it. And then they could have come back to me like, you didn't do it right. So DistroKid had the quickest turnaround from like putting it into the platform to publishing it live so I could get that number as fast as I could. So I could plug it in, get all my samples good to go, and then submit it on time. So I don't know much about Lander besides the fact that I think it might have taken a little bit longer. But yeah, that's why I chose DistroKid in that moment of desperation. All righty. Well, that's all she wrote. Appreciate you guys sticking around. If you have any other questions, feel free to hit me up. And tell your friends about our community. We love more people too. So that's a great way to help a guy out as well. So that's all I got. I will see you guys later. Take care.
Have a good one.
Too. Bye.
Yeah, cheers.